Welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast, where we're going to take a look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Dwayne Weed.
Hello, and welcome to the Discover Montcalm podcast. We're on episode number 68, and this is going to be the first of a four-part series on the birthplace of Meijer. You see, back in 2001, I was asked by the Greenville Daily News to come in and tape an interview at what then was the new Meijer store on South Greenville Road. A group of executives from Meijer, along with Fred and Lena, were there, and Meijer was doing a big production on this particular interview, and we were asked to come in and get it as well. So I'm playing it back, but I'm going to do it in 4 segments because it was well over an hour long, and going to break it up into shorter podcasts here. So this is episode number 68. It's at what was then the new Meijer there on South Greenville Road about a week before they opened. Now, during this interview, the executives, I did not get full names. But on the left, we have a Tom, then there's Jim, Lloyd, Lena, Fred, Leo, the barber, Mariel, and then a Dwayne, and the gentleman asking the questions, his name was Rick. So this first part, let's get this history going. You can find the Discover Montcalm podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as discovermontcalmpodcast.com. This one is a video. They're all videos, but this interview is a video, and you can actually see the people. So if you want to click on over to the YouTube channel, like it, subscribe to it, help us out, share it out. But now, let's start our first of a 4-part series on the birthplace of Meijer.
Muriel,
yes.
You had a long career at Meijer. Perhaps you can share one of your fondest memories of your career.
Well, how far back do you want to go?
Well, you pick out one. Take your pick. One of your fondest memories.
I think the main thing was Hendrik Meijer's had a drinking fountain outside of the store, and my folks had separated, and Henry come out one day and said, "Would you like a job?" And I said, "I'll have to check with my folks." My mother said, "If your grades go down, you're all done, but you can give it a try." And that was January 30th, 1941.
Wow, that's
and
terrific.
I have a lot of respect for Mrs. Gazina Meijer because she taught me a lot that has led me to where I am today.
Oh, very good, thank you. Lena, you too, you've been around just about since the beginning. You've got so many memories. In regards to the business, can you tell us about one of your fondest memories?
We had shoe rationing at the time I was working at the store, and you have so many stamps, and they last so long, and I used my last one to buy a pair of saddle shoes. And we had to stamp all the merchandise in with a stamper, the cans and everything. And wouldn't you know, I spilled it on my nice new saddle shoes. And I could have cried.
And she's still crying because we didn't buy her a new pair.
Is that one of your fondest memories, Lena?
I still can remember that. That was really...
Okay, thank you. Jim, early on when you first began at Meijer, what impressed you the most? What struck you about the company?
I think what impressed me the most was the fact that there were such high standards in our company, that everyone worked to a level of expectation, and people took pride in the fact that working for Meijer meant something more than many other places that one might work, and it still sticks with me today, and I think those standards are still with us today.
Well, thank you. Tom, you're the baby of the group, but you've still got a long history with the company, and perhaps you could pick out someone who really had a positive influence on your career for us.
Rick, I am going to challenge the baby of it. I'm not sure we're ready to accept that.
I liked it. I thought baby was fine. I think, well, some of the fondest What was the question there?
You can tell us about a fond memory if you like, or somebody who had a positive influence on your career.
I think early on when I first started out, I started at the Plainfield store, and then we converted it over to the Thrifty Acres. And when we converted it over, Bill Whitaker became the store director, and he was a very positive person at the time. He just left a memory of being always treating people with dignity and respect. He was always seemed to be a very genuine, nice guy all the time. I think way back when, there's been a lot of people throughout my career, you for one, have left a lot of positive influences on me, but I think looking way back, that's probably 30 years ago when Bill was the store director at the time.
And Bill Whitaker is still running our Grand Haven store.
Yep.
And Bill Whitaker was working in the Plainfield store when a couple of ladies came through peddling something, and they got a job in the store because they liked that better. They were from Wisconsin. So he married one of the ladies, and they're still married. And when I was in the store one day, he said, well, when Fred comes in, which isn't very often, it's his store. The rest of the time, it's my store. And I like that. I like that.
And knowing Bill, he's serious about it too.
Rick, can I jump in here?
Certainly, Lloyd.
I was having lunch one day in the cafeteria at Meijer's with some colleagues of mine, and one of the customers in there spilled a drink on the floor, and Tom was in there at the time, and he immediately got a mop and came back and got the customer seated and mopped up and one of my colleagues said, now look at that, that's the store director. And he's the one that went and got the mop and cleaned up the thing. And I said, well, you know, that isn't anything that Fred wouldn't have done. Had he been here, he would have had the mop and cleaned it up. So he had good training.
I think, Lloyd, you just described the essence of the company with that little story. That's a great story.
Rick, I got to tell you how progression works, too. Fred was just telling the story about Bill Whitaker. Today, Bill tells a different story. When Fred comes in the store, it's still Bill's store today. So he has changed that piece.
Well, Fred, it was 1934. You were 14 years old. Your father opens the North Side grocery store. Here you are 67 years later. Did you imagine your store would become as grand as it is?
We didn't imagine anything. The only thing we imagined is trying to pay the mortgage to keep from losing the building. And what I remember over the years, and we talked about it, that Leo, the barber here, bought my dad's barber shop. And my dad taught him the barber trade. And then Leo later on left there and went to St. Ignace and down to Pontiac, I think. And he came back, or my dad I don't know how he came back to Greenville. And my dad tried to sell him the barber shop so he could start a little grocery store because we were offered the merchandise. And so Leo borrowed $400 from his fiancée, Minnie. When I said girlfriend, he borrowed it from his girlfriend and he married her, she didn't have to pay her. She pipes up, and she was over 90. She says, if I was his girlfriend, I wouldn't have loaned him the money. I was his fiancée. Well, he still married her. Now, I don't know if he ever paid her back or not. But Leo, well, he'd have to say where he got his money's worth or not. He married her. But he paid my dad $350 plus $25 for the first month's rent. Then he had $25 left for cash in the till. And as far as I know, that was the only cash money we had. Everything else was used fixtures and on credit.
I had $3.50 in silver to put in the cash register.
Well, what about the 25?
Oh, I didn't have that much.
Oh, okay, all right. I won't start the mathematics. Anyway, I thought he gave my dad $375 total, and he said he borrowed $400. But Danish math in Greenville or German math in Greenville is the metric system a little different, so I won't try to figure it out. Leo has more history.
Well, Leo does have a lot of history with you, Fred and Lena, and been long-term friends of yours. Leo, has Fred and Lena changed over the years?
You know, this all started in the barber business when I was about 10 years old. And there was a barber shop across the street from the lumberyard in North Greenville, and I was always inquisitive of what that man was doing in there. When my dad says, that's the barber, that's where you go get your hair cut. So I don't think there was a Saturday that I ever missed when school was out that I didn't go over there and watch him. And then when it came about 5 minutes to 12 on Saturday, he'd say, boy, come here. And he'd give me a stick of gum or something. Now, there's your dad, so you go home. Next Saturday, the same thing. Well, this went on for years, and something always tickled in the back of my head, I'd like to be a barber. And in those days, you weren't a barber, you were a tonsorial artist. You was a partial doctor, you pulled teeth, you fixed wounds, you did all that. And you didn't charge any extra, that was a courtesy. And that's where you got your red, white, and blue. But to this day, I can't tell you what the blue is for, only the veins. That's what red, white, and blue.
On the barber pole.
On the barber pole, yes. And that Henry had a big barber pole, I think about 8 foot high, and I'd say the base was 2 foot square, and it tapered a little bit, and got up on top, it was a big round ball, but the rest of it was the stripes going around it like that. So when it came 1922, I applied for a job at Gibson's, and they asked, what can you do? I said, do anything you show me. So they put me in with Wallace Rosendahl, and he was the timekeeper, so I did time work. And then in the meantime, I talked to my dad and said, let's go talk to Hendrik Meijer and see about learning the barber trade. You want to learn it? I said, yes. So we went to Henry's house one night and told him, yeah, he can start in anytime he wants to. Stand back there and watch. So for a year, I did this. I stood there and watched Henry and Dane Downey barber. And finally, Henry says one day, you're getting pretty good now, and I'm going to lose my barber. You want a steady job? Gee, I didn't know what to say. Boy, that was polished right there. I said, yes, I'll take it. So after 2 weeks, I give him a notice at Gibson's, and I started to learn to be a barber. So in 1925, I became a full-fledged barber, or tonsorial artist. And from then on, I've learned the beauty trade. I learned hairdressing. I learned body massaging. I learned all that because I liked it. And I did a lot of women's work on their backs, plus. I didn't say anything else. And a lot of people laughed at me for doing body massaging. Well, that got to be quite an art, body massaging. And I did the hammer massage. And that tenders all your muscles up like that. And then I'll go around through, I had my barber shop out to Turk Lake, then I sold out, got sick. And
Yeah, but you flew kites in between.
what?
You flew kites in between.
Oh gosh, forgot that. Back when Fred was about, he was about 6 or 7 years old.
I was a lot younger.
All right, then you was younger. You were born in 1919. And I had seen a box kite. Of course, Dad and I were quite handy with tools. And built this box kite 3 foot high, 3 foot this way, and a foot this way. And what do you think we put around it like that to keep air in? My mother had an old bed sheet. And we had to sew a piece on that and put that around the top. That's 12 inches wide. Went down here another 12 inches like that and put it down. Then we take flour and made a paste out of it and painted that all over that cloth and let it dry for a day. And then it came one Thursday or one Saturday, I forget. Went up to where the store is now, that's where Fred lived. And I said, you want to help fly that kite? And he says, yeah. So I said, you walk down there with the kite, and went up and the string broke. I says, you got any binder twine? What's binder twine? I says, it's a ball like that, it's got cord in it. He went and got one. All
You
right,
often
so to wind it on.
tied hay with it and stuff, with corn
So
stalks.
we hooked that on the kite, and I said, now you get down there and hold the kite, and I'll pull on the kite, up went the kite, just like that. Finally, Freddie came over there, and he says, Mr. Schwartz, could I fly that kite? And I says, no. Well, why can't I fly it? I said, it'll pull you right up in the air. Well, what should I do? I said, you got any pockets? Yes. So he walked out in the field there, and he filled all his pockets with stones. And he came back, and he was just as sober as he could be. Mr. Schwartz, could I fly it now? I says, yes. So Fred flew the kite. So on his 70th birthday, what are you going to give a man that's, I won't say it all, that's very wealthy? He's got everything he wants, or he can get it. And my wife says, I know something you can make. You make a little 4x4 box kite, 12 inches high and 4 inches square. And what are you going to cover it with? Red bandana handkerchief cut 4 inches wide. So I made it. So then I made a crank. I made 2 horses out of wood. I cut them out of wood, perfect horses, and drilled a hole through them and put a crank on them. And in the center there is where the binder find was. So on the outside you wound it up like that, wind the binder find up. So for his 70th birthday, we put that in a great big box. And Fred dug that Leo Schwartz must have done this. Finally pulled out this box kite.
It's hanging in the office today.
And
You've seen it there
today that box kite is in his office. Yeah. Yeah. But that was my wife's idea to build him a box kite. So I barbered then from then on, and I finally retired in 1973. Yeah. Yeah. I thought I'd done my share. And the best thing it was, Hendrik Meijer taught me a lot of things that they don't teach today. He taught you a lot of good English. And don't say, there goes my son John coming back again. Or don't throw the cow over the fence some hay. Don't do any of that, but Fred did. Yeah. But Hendrik Meijer was quite a man. We had one gentleman who used to come down to the barber shop every morning at 8 o'clock. But you can't guess who it was. E.W. Rennie from Rennie Refrigerator Company. And Hendrik Meijer tipped me off ahead of time. You say good morning, Ellis, and if he speaks to you, you can talk to him. If he comes down tomorrow morning and you say good morning, Ellis, you don't say nothing, keep your damn mouth shut. And that's just the way it was said. So that's how we got along. And to this day, I never once received one nickel from E.W. Rennie in my hand. But he flipped the boot black 15 cents. Yeah. So what Ellis Rennie's barber work done helped pay my rent. That was all put on black and white on paper. And Henry had an agreement with me for a 5-year lease, and which I enjoyed very much being there. And then I went up by the railroad tracks after they started to enlarge that store right there. Yeah.
Well, see, Leo's barber shop that he bought from my dad was...
It's right in the bottom of that basement.
In the bottom where it says home of. Yeah. There was a stairway going down, and that's my dad's barber shop. Then when we enlarged the store, it was up 2.5 steps. Then we had to cut all the joists around, drop the floor down, and to level it off with where it says supermarket there, so it could be all one store. And so the stone fountain that Muriel's talking about is right there in the corner. This is the way it was when Lena started in the store on that corner, wasn't it? And then at the other end there was a beer garden under the word Super, and Pat McCann ran that. And so my dad talked him into going in the basement and calling it the Ratskelder after the German words advice cellar. And of course everybody come up from Greenville. A lot of Christian reforms that wouldn't dance in Grand Rapids came to Greenville and they would dance in there. And we go down Saturday night and watch them dance. But Ratskelder means advice cellar, but it was dubbed the Rat Cellar.
It's Ratskeller.
I know, but they called it the Rat Cellar.
Yeah, but it's a rat.
Anyway, Ratskelder in German. Yeah. Anyway, we had to get a stairway going down where it says value, because they had to get in the place. And of course, once we got the restaurant done, we could double the store, and then we could triple it by coming off the corner. And he could double his restaurant, which was a 21-foot store under the word Super. Where it says market, that was the first store. But then as we got more volume, we enlarged the store across. And all that beautiful artwork, like celery for 15 cents and grapefruit for 10 for 35, that's my artwork. It's terrible, but it's the best I could do. But anyway, that basement, in those days it didn't have air hammers, and they had to cut through the wall. And the two people took the job, one at a time, for $10 to cut a doorway in there. And they gave up. It was pretty good concrete, reinforced, I suppose. And so they scoured it, made a channel, but they couldn't get through that wall. So then Leo's uncle, Rudy Schwartz, built his first building here on the corner. He was a contractor. He was also a little bit flamboyant or crazy, whatever it was. Yeah. But we were working upstairs in the store on the main floor, And well, he took the job for $10. All at once, tunk, rattle. And we went running out there to see what's going on. He blew a hole through that wall while we're waiting on customers upstairs with dynamite. And he said, here it is, I want my $10. My dad gave him the $10, we had the hole in the wall. And so we could go on with the restaurant. But dynamite right
They
under
took the dynamite and cut pieces about that long. Then they drilled holes down there just the shape of that door. And the one fuse touches the whole thing off.
But see, these farmers and contractors were good with dynamite, because they would dynamite stumps in the fields or big rocks in the fields to get rid of them and break them up. And so they knew what they were doing. It's a good thing here they knew what they were doing, and we'd have been blowing the kingdom come, or wherever we'd go. But we got the restaurant down there, and it was a roaring success.
I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Discover Montcalm podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Discover Montcalm Podcast, as well as discovermontcalmpodcast.com. This concludes the first part of a 4-part series on the birthplace of Meijer. In episode number 69, we're going to get into some of the Meijer concepts and kind of their vision as we continue with that interview. So thank you for tuning in, and remember to buy and shop locally.
Connect and subscribe to Discover Montcalm Podcast at discovermontcalmpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Discover Montcalm Podcast. To be featured in an upcoming show, contact Dwayne at 231-250-9624. Remember to subscribe at discovermontcalmpodcast.com.